Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I'm going to state something that's going to be a fairly unpopular statement, but it doesn't make it untrue. And it's that quad weaknesses are actually not as common as people think they are on the squat. And I mean, it's so bad that I see people out there who are trying to get to a 400 squat still who think that they need to do large amounts of quad work, when the truth is it's usually their posterior chain that's holding them back in some way. It's usually glutes, it's usually hamstrings, hips, various things like that. But they will argue about it. And people always say, well, the quad is the primary mover. Well, yes, of course, the quad's a primary mover. But the fact that your quads might be smaller than you think they need to be could just be due to the fact that you're just not big enough and strong enough to squat the total loads that you need to squat, or your quads will be bigger. And I'm not even saying that quad training isn't necessary, or that we shouldn't do any, or that I don't do any. So I want to make that clear when I say that. Because again, when it comes down to these things, you'll say that, and sometimes people say, so are you saying all I need to do is squats and some hamstring curls? It's like, no, I'm not saying that at all. Because people misinterpret these things. But you guys watch me continue to get stronger and stronger and hit squat PRs. Do you see me doing any real quad work? Not a lot. Is it to say that I don't, though? Well, no, I do. I do it. You just may not always realize it. With the speed squats, the box jumps, particularly my sled drags. And that's a point I will come to at the end of this. Your GPP work and your restoration days can largely affect whatever you have that might be potential weak links, or to short things up to where they never become weak links. And I'll get to the sled drags in a minute, but I feel like that actually will resolve any potential quad weaknesses that most people have if the rest of their training is already balanced. All right, but realistically, the reason a lot of people feel like they have a quad weakness is because they squat in a way that tries to emphasize the quads more, instead of trying to squat in a way that's more balanced so that they can move a heavier weight and get more muscle involved. Now, you'll get people say, but I'm not squatting to build the rest of my body. I'm squatting for my quads. And I'm like, well, that's silly. We don't use the squat because we want bigger quads. We use the squat because we want a bigger, stronger, more powerful lower body. Okay, you understand the difference? Because when you squat correctly, you squat in a way that uses the most muscle mass, it does train the entire lower body. And any weak muscle could potentially be limiting your squat. Any muscle from your waist or lower, and actually your upper back, can limit your squat. Absolutely can. So what makes you think that your quads are the weakness? Well, again, it comes down to maybe people who are in a real narrow stance, Olympic style squat. Well, it's your squat style that's causing the weakness, not your actual musculature. But I promise you that if you can't take a much wider stance and put a lot more weight on the bar, I can promise you that your quads are not the weak link. Your quads might be overdeveloped relative to your strength, in which case you're not doing yourself any favors. Okay, you're not doing yourself any favors by doing the extra quad work. And I mean, even for me, we saw that back when I was squatting mid 500s. As soon as I went back to the back squat, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I need more quad. I used to worry about that until I realized, no, it's only because of the squat style that I'm doing. My quads are actually overdeveloped. Even now in this video, and who knows, I'll probably be squatting. I could be squatting over 600 by the time of this video before it comes up. So I'm about to hit a big squat PR, test it out this coming week, and we'll see where I'm at. But the point is, my quads are already, even in this video, they're big enough to squat over 600 pounds. So if I don't, then it's going to be hips or upper back or something else limiting it. But I can tell you that those are more likely to be limits for you. They're more likely to be limits for you because people train them less. And we come over that point, even we'll mention stuff like hamstrings, and people will say, well, the hamstrings don't get activated that much on the squat. Yeah, they actually do, if you're squatting in a true power stance. Hamstrings do matter. And they do matter because also they're a dynamic stabilizer. Okay? You need to understand the way the body works on big structural movements, on big movements. The opposing muscle groups are absolutely important. Biceps are actually important, for example, for your bench press. Doesn't make a lot of sense if you use the basic skeletal model that many people have, to where it's just that lever moving against it, not understanding the way these other muscles work on opposing muscle groups. But that's been established in research and stuff also, that there's actually a contradiction specifically noted in the scientific literature, and a theory that was postulated quite some time back, when they realized that the opposing muscle groups matter tremendously on multi-joint exercises. And they can absolutely limit your performance. But yes, hamstrings do matter. And if you have weak hamstrings and you're very quad dominant, and you go to take the really wide stance squat and you can't do more weight, you know that it's not your quads. I mean, and that's actually a great test of it. Okay, for people out there who think that their quads are the limiting factor, do a squat that brings more muscles into play and that reduces the range of motion. So if you're squatting shoulder width, Olympic style, and you go all the way out, feet out to the edges of the racks, and test your squat. Okay, that wider stance shortens the range of motion. It shortens the range of motion. And it does so through mechanisms we've discussed before at the actual joint level. And it brings more muscle into the movement. You should absolutely be able to lift more weight. So if you squat, say 405 right now, Olympic style, and you take the wide stance and you don't squat quite a bit more than 405, what does that tell you about your weak links? Because you just brought more muscles in and shortened the range of motion. There is no way your squat should only be 405 anymore. If it is, what does that tell you? Something else is a weak link. You got way more weak links than that. Very possibly posterior chain. Very possibly hips. So these are things that we need to develop. These are things we need to develop. Then we come back over to, what about quads? People are like, well, it's easy you to talk, Jason. You got pretty big quads. Yeah, but what am I doing for my quads these days? Why are my quads still growing? If all I'm doing on camera that you see is really posterior chain work and speed box squats with a wide stance, yet my quads are growing, there's something happening. And here's what I would say for a lot of you out there: speed boxes might be all that you need. And your speed pulls, your speed work might be enough. But what else are we doing? Are you doing other stuff? Are you doing plyometrics? Well, plyometrics train the quads to be explosive. They train you to be explosive out of the bottom of there, which is really where you need the quad. Because realistically, if you wanted stronger quads for a squat, what specifically do you need? You need them to be explosive on the concentric rep coming out of the bottom. Once you're halfway up, they don't matter that much anymore. Once you hit that little sticking point, quad strength doesn't become that big of a deal anymore. Not saying it doesn't matter, but it's very unlikely to be any form of limiting factor. If you were strong enough to get the weight to that point, your quads have done most of the work that they're going to do. They're going to take a back seat in terms of leverages. Completely. So plyometrics will help with that. What about sled dragging? We could argue about that. Well, there's no eccentric. Yeah, but who cares? If we're going to talk about specificity of training, sled drags let you do very large amounts of concentric work with your quads. And also your calves. Do you need your quads to have a lot of eccentric control? Do the quads control the eccentric rep that much when you're sitting back on a power squat? No. A lot of your posterior chain does, though. So you might care about the posterior chain for eccentric work more. i.e. watching me do the good mornings there. That matters. That has a big amount of effect on the eccentric. Quads don't. You just need the quads to be able to drive you out of the bottom when you go to start the weight. You drag a sled and get that. We're all doing conditioning work anyways. We're athletes, right? We're not just powerlifters. We're all athletes. So we're doing conditioning work anyways. Why not just pick conditioning work? It's going to build the quads in a way that helps your squat also. And your deadlift. Problem solved. Quad weakness goes away. Even if you had one. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.